Good afternoon, Annie.
Hi, Fonda.
Um, my name is Fonda Arbetter, and I am going to interview you for the One Story at a Time project, Viva Shalom, celebrating the Latin American Jewish people in Dallas. And I would like you to talk about when your family originally immigrated to the country of Colombia.
Correct.
And I want you to share about their lives and the early years there.
Okay, so I'll start with my mother. My mother's name was Isfela Kukier de Panzer. That's my married name, my maiden name. So Kukier is Cukier. That was my mom's maiden name. And she married my dad, Moises, Moises, Panzer, Pancer. My mom arrived in Barranquilla, Colombia, actually in a small town called Ciénaga, which was the port in the Atlantic Ocean in Colombia, over on the north side of the country, right between Barranquilla and Cartagena. And she arrived in September of 1939 at 10 years old, barely escaping the Holocaust. She arrived with her mother. Her father, for some reason, was already in Colombia and had a bakery in a little town called Ciénaga. After that, my mother, she came with a cousin who was given to my grandmother because she has 16 siblings, and she gave the cousin to my grandmother to take him because they were in line to go to the concentration camps. So mom arrived in Colombia at 10 years old, speaking only Polish at that time, and reunited with my grandfather. And that was how my mother arrived. My dad, on the other hand, also from Poland, his parents, Israel and Toba, Tauba, Panzer, came also from Poland, but they thought they were living in the 1926, somewhere around there. They thought they're coming to America because they already had a brother and two sisters in New York. But when they arrived in Ellis Island was closed. So they dropped them off in Havana, Cuba. And my dad was born March 28th in Havana. And after 2 years of working in Cuba, my grandfather heard that they were growing money on the banana trees. So he packed up and left and moved to Barranquilla. So my father and his brother was born already in Colombia, in Barranquilla. They grew up there. And my mother continued to be an only child. My parents met when my mother was 10 years old and got married when my mom was 20 and my dad was 21 years old. My grandfather on my mother's side died very young. I don't remember him. He was a diabetic, and so I don't know much about him, but my grandmother lived very close to our JCC and our school. And my grandparents on my father's side, they had a tannery company. And in 1963, they made Aliyah to Israel. And my grandfather died a year later. He had cancer, and then afterwards my dad brought my grandma back to Barranquilla. And my grandmother was Toba Panzer.
That's right.
And my uncle's name was Samuel Panzer. He made Aliyah to Israel as well. My father and my uncle had an architectural company that actually built the school, our JCC, that went from preschool to high school. He built in Barranquilla. He built the the conservative synagogue called Bethel Synagogue, where I got married in 1975. And a lot of the people that you're interviewing here got married as well. My father was very active in the community. He brought the first conservative rabbi to Barranquilla. His name was Angel Kreyman from Argentina. And I grew up in a conservative environment, went to a Jewish school from preschool till 12th grade. Our school was called Colegio Hebreo Unión. And I had about 36 kids in my graduating class. And the school had 49% non-Jews and 51% Jewish people. And we had a waiting list, but in order to keep the school more Jewish, we kept it at 51%. We had a great education. We still have contact with a lot of our friends, Jewish and not Jewish, because the non-Jewish kids wanted to go in the Jewish school. And so my father was president of the community. My grandfather was one of the 2 or 3 patrons of the community, together with Alfredo Steckerl and Carlos Kalusin and Israel Panzer. I had a great life in Barranquilla. We grew up, going to shul every Friday. I had to be home every Friday night for services and for dinner. Then we could find dates and do whatever we wanted. A lot of us have left Colombia, but we keep it very close in our hearts. I left home in 1972 when I graduated high school and went to the University of Miami to study nursing. And after 2 years, I was sort of dating Pedro Nosnik, who happens to be my husband now. And so I begged my dad to let me go to Mexico to school. So I enrolled there in physical therapy, and I graduated physical therapy in Mexico City at the Hospital Inglés. It was called the ABC, American British Cowdray Hospital. And we got married in 1975 in Barranquilla, Colombia. And then I moved to Mexico. My husband was finishing medical school. So we lived with my in-laws for 9 months, and then came to the States again in 1976. We moved to Baltimore, Maryland, where my husband was doing his residency in internal medicine at Sinai Hospital. And our first daughter, Leah, was born in February 9th of 1977. And after 2 years in Baltimore, we moved to Dallas in June 15 of 1978 because my husband Pedro was accepted at UT Southwestern to do neurology. And so we came to Dallas at that time in 1978, and he went on to do his residency, and 40 plus years later, we're in Dallas. And I have 2 other children, Israel, who was born August 28th of 1980, and Stephen, who was born May 10 of 1984. My daughter Leah lives in Montclair, New Jersey. She is married to Stephen Moranes, and they have 2 beautiful girls. Ella, born, she's 7 years old, born in December 6, and Mina, born November 11. They're 7 and 5 years old. Then Israel, we call him Easy, lives in Dallas, married to Rachel Umansky, and they have 2 boys, Meyer, who's 7 years old, born in June 21st, and Sydney, who was born April the 12th, he just turned 5 years old. And my baby Stephen lives in New York City. He is married to Carolyn Goldberg, and they have two boys. One is Jack. He will be 5 on May 26th. And the little monkey, his name is Charlie. He was born December 10th of 2019. Leah is an executive for a media agency, and she works very hard. She went to Wharton undergrad school and has an MBA from Stern, NYU. My middle son is a physician. He is a pediatric urologist, and he went to school in Michigan undergrad and Duke Medical School. And the baby, he went to University of Michigan and is in the wine industry in New York. He's an importer and distributor of wines and spirits in New York and New Jersey.
Do you have any family left in Colombia?
No, well, I have some cousins, but I have two sisters, older than me. I'm the baby in the family. My sister Miriam Tabasinik, she lives in Miami. She's a physician and an architect. And she also grew up in the same school as I grew up. We all graduated together. And then I have another sister, her name is Raquel Panzer, and she has one daughter that lives in Fort Lauderdale that has two boys and a girl. My sister Miriam has two girls and a son. One of the daughters lives in Dallas, Sandy Tabasinik, and she has a boy and a girl and a boy.
How often do you see all of your family? Do you get together for Jewish holidays?
My sisters come quite often to Dallas because my mother is 93 years old. She lives in Dallas, and so they come to visit quite a bit, and we always get together we try to get together for holidays, but mainly we have a lot of bar and bat mitzvahs coming up now for the grandkids, the next generation. But we always got together for everything. And what else?
Tell me about your Jewish involvement in Dallas.
When I first came to Dallas in 78, I worked as a volunteer at the Jewish Federation. Mostly driving. At that time, there were a lot of the Russian immigrants that were coming to Dallas at that time, and I drove them to the doctors and help out with finding them the housing and everything. I also was part of many of the Jewish Federation events that we did, that were the galas and everything. And I participated in my synagogue. You know, I belong to Chabad with Rabbi Dubrovsky, so I've been very active in the community as well. We are very active in AIPAC, so that's our involvement with Israel. Since, you know, we're very involved socially and giving to AIPAC for many, many years, because when you grow up in a Latin country, it's not like in the States, but like your home away from home is Israel. Right. So we were always, actually, it was almost like a rule that if you were part of the Jewish community in Barranquilla, you had to give X amount of money every year that was given to Israel. That was no choice. It was depending on your income, you had to give money to Israel. So we were very involved. I have, my father's brother went to Israel, and so he passed away already, but I had a family there. My father had aunts and uncles that were still very Orthodox from Poland that went to Israel. So I was able to visit Sharm el-Sheikh and Bnei Brak because the family was extremely religious. I also had the pleasure of meeting one of my mother's cousins in one of the kibbutzim that we visited. She survived Auschwitz because she was a nurse. She was a pharmacist that worked for Mengele, and that's how she saved her life.
Wow. Yeah. What a very interesting background you have, Annie.
Yeah.
would you like to show some pictures of your family?
Oh my God. Well, here's my dad, Moises, and my mother, and this is their first great-grandson, Mendy, who is 23 or 24 years old now. Here, this is a great picture. This is my grandmother, my father's mother. She passed, her name was Toba Panzer, and she passed when she was 101 years old in Barranquilla. So she's buried in Barranquilla. This is another picture of my parents, which I think it was a beautiful picture. This is the picture of me, my rehearsal dinner, 1975. You can see my dad and my two sisters. My dad and my two sisters, Raque, and we call my sister Miriam Minchu.
Which one are you?
This is me here. This is me. I mean, I have so much stuff. I mean, this is my graduating class from high school. I mean, you can see I have the pictures. These were all the girls.
Wow.
This is my dress for my graduating class. That was 1972. You know, this was my great friend. She unfortunately passed away, but she was the daughter of our Sephardic rabbi who led the Orthodox synagogue. And even though we were a community of maybe 200 families at that time, we had an Orthodox synagogue that was mainly Sephardic, that had a moel and a shoichet. Which when I came to Dallas, I was shocked that when my son was born in 1980, I couldn't get a moel to do his circumcision. So I had to hire somebody from Tyler, Texas. And then for my second son in 1984, I had to hire a moel from Houston, because we still didn't have a moel in Dallas until 1985 when Rabbi Scholl arrived in Dallas. It's incredible. I couldn't believe it that in a town like mine, with 200 families, we couldn't.
You had it.
We had just about everything that we needed. I mean, it was an incredible community. And today, the two synagogues still stand tall.
In Barranquilla?
In Barranquilla, we still have a JCC and we still have the school. I'm not sure that the school is 100% Jewish, but it's still called Colegio Hebreo Unión, and they still teach all the Jewish religion and everything. And we still have a conservative synagogue, plus Chabad. We have a very strong rabbi, Chabad rabbi in Barranquilla as well.
So Jews are very accepted in Barranquilla.
Yes, you know, my father used to have a joke that he used to say that when you ask a non-Jewish person how many Jews were in Barranquilla, they would tell him 1 million. Because if you went to a restaurant or if you went to an event or a concert, we were all there. So they thought that we were very, very a long time. And of course, our community was pretty much, everybody was very well off. I mean, you know, we never knew that we were uncomfortable. There were a few people that didn't have means. There were people that were very, very wealthy, and there were people that were okay, but we never knew that we were missing anything. Everybody took care of each other, and we had the ladies in the community had a group that was called El Costurero, which means the sewing ladies. But then when we all started having bar and bat mitzvahs and weddings, these ladies turned around and started doing catering. So when we would have weddings or bar mitzvahs, these ladies would prepare the buffet, decorate it and everything, and they only charge for the cost of the ingredients, and the money that they collected, they would give it to the poor people and the poor schools. And I can tell you, when I got married, we had 600 people. All the food and everything, all the desserts were made by the Jewish ladies in the community. It was incredible. And so for everybody else, I mean, I can show you my mother's cookbooks. I mean, I have 4 notebooks of recipes that this was so-and-so's recipe, this was so-and-so recipe. Everyone has a parenthesis and has a name.
You know, we need some of those because we're collecting some recipes.
I'm going to show you. I mean, my mother, I mean, everything was cooked from scratch. I think the freezer in my house was bigger than the freezer in that refrigerator, because the temperature was so hot. We lived in 100-degree weather that if you left the milk out for a little bit, it would go bad, it would ruin. So if you open cereal, it would get soggy. So everything was put in the freezer. And because we didn't have that many restaurants, of course, things have changed today. You have great restaurants and great everything. But when I was growing up, it wasn't like that. So all the mothers had to learn how to cook, and everybody cooked incredible. And there were frozen meals, because if my dad had an executive that came to visit, he would call, Mom, I have so-and-so coming for dinner, and my mother will pull out the lasagna or will pull out whatever, and dinner was served.
What about who made the challah?
Okay, so I'll tell you the story. You just interviewed Sophie Poliak.
Yes.
So Sophie's grandparents were of German descent.
They were bakers.
They were bakers, and they had the best bakery that there was in the world. So we always went on Friday to buy fresh bread from Oma and Opa. And they had breads that were typical of Colombia and challah and everything. And that's where everybody went to buy the bread.
But you had a baker in your family too.
But that was closed. I mean, it was just my grandfather at the beginning. And then my grandfather's brother, I think, married somebody that was not Jewish. And so my father always kept the connection with them. Mm-hmm. They were not raised Jewish, but my father always kept the connection with them. And actually, some of them worked at my father's company where my dad worked to keep the relationship going.
The architect.
No, that was my uncle. My father was the CEO of a company called Fábrica de Hilazas Vanilón that was owned by a Sephardic Jew named Leon Bigio, Bigio, and 49% of the company was owned by Monsanto. So they did the thread for the nylon. Remember the baby dolls and the nylon? So they did everything from the plastic chips to create the nylon all the way to the thread. And then from the thread, it would go to one of their other companies in Bogota, where they would stretch the nylon and make fabric. And they make baby dolls. Remember the baby dolls?
Very nice.
And then from the waste of the plastic of the primary materials, they made combs. So it was a very successful company that my father ran for about 30 years until he retired.
Wow. Do you want to show, you want to take your laptop and show the Shriner?
Yeah. So my father was a mason in Barranquilla. He was all the way up to 33rd degree. And I have here his costumes. My father used to belong to the Lions Club you name it, my father was involved. I mean, so how do I turn this around to show how do I show it around?
Is there a flip?
I don't know. Well, but anyways, if you see behind me here, that's my father's 33rd degree of the Mason. And this is the 32nd degree here. And then he was also, you know, when you're a Mason on your 32nd degree, you can become a Shriner. So you might be familiar with the hat. This is my father's Shriner hat and his necklace from the 33rd degree.
Show these and tell about that.
Oh, well, my husband is not only a physician, but he is very involved in wine. We have a very big wine collection. So we do a lot of charity work here in Dallas. We give dinners to many associations and practically all the Jewish schools. We give a dinner every year to Levine Academy that just happened last week. We give a dinner to Akiba. We give a dinner to Green Hill School because my grandchildren go there. We give a dinner to Temple Emmanuel because my grandson goes there. And we also are very involved with the American Heart Association and with Living for Zachary. We've been very blessed and we like to give back. Otherwise, I'm very active with Chabad. I'm a big supporter of Chabad because my father was a big supporter of Chabad, even though we are not Orthodox or anything like that, but we are conservative Jews. And
They take all sex.
they take everything as long as you pay. No, I'm kidding.
True.
As long as you give, yeah.
Okay, well, I guess we can wrap this up. And do you see all your traditions carrying on in your
Yes.
kids and your grandkids?
Yes, yes. My kids, all of them married Jewish girls, so they all follow the Jewish traditions, and they are conservative Jews, a little bit on the Reformed side, but they follow tradition, which is the important thing for me. They all traditional. They all want their kids to learn about Judaism, and we keep following, you know, as we were taught by our parents and our grandparents.
So you've enjoyed your years in Dallas, Texas.
This is home. I am a realtor in Dallas.
Who do you work for?
I am, my brokerage license is with Alibeth Oman and Associates. I've been working for them for 12 years. Before that, I worked for Harry Bach, Backendorf. And before that, I worked for another Israeli company, Diamond Importers, until I had children. And then I was blessed to be able to stay home and raise my children. And then I went back to work and I enjoy it very much.
How do you like selling real estate in Dallas, Texas?
I love it. I couldn't be happier now. I mean, real estate in Dallas is crazy now. And you know, we have a lot of families, Jewish families coming in from California. I have clients from Arizona now moving to Dallas that their children are going to go to Akiba.
Wonderful.
They have 9 kids among them. So I'm happy to keep the Jewish connection with my clients. That's something that it was embedded in me from my dad. Even though he was not religious, he always went to synagogue Friday and Saturday and was very, very loved in the community. I mean, anybody would remember Moises Panzer. Actually, when he came to Miami, he was one of the big persons involved in Chabad in Miami, helping raise money for the Bal Harbor Shul. And then when he came here, he was a buddy of Rabbi Dubrovsky until the day he passed. So it's embedded in my blood.
Well, we're very lucky to have you here, Annie, and you and Pedro are wonderful members of the Dallas community, and we appreciate so much you telling us about your life as a Latin American Jewish person and family in Dallas, Texas. And we look forward to many more things that you will be doing here.
I'll just give you a little snip about Pedro, because I don't know if you'll catch him. So Pedro was born in Mexico City from, his father came from Ukraine when he was 4 years old, came to Mexico. His mother, his name was Abraham. His mother, Edna, was born in the United States. Her mother left Russia at 17 years old and arrived in Philadelphia and married a Jewish World War I veteran that unfortunately passed away when my mother-in-law was 1.5 years old. So after the war, Bob and Leah as we used to call her, she found two sisters in Mexico City after the war. So she packed up Philadelphia and moved to Mexico City. And she married 2 more times, didn't have any more children. My mother-in-law was her only daughter. And I can tell you that the biggest influence in the life of my husband was Bovelia, his grandmother on the mother's side. Our daughter Leah is named after her. And she worked all her life in whatever she could do, but she worked. My father-in-law went to work for his father, had a clothing factory that was called, oh God, I forgot the name now, but they used to do leather jackets and shirts. And that company didn't survive after the grandpa passed. My father-in-law had a brother and a sister. And Pedro grew up also in a Jewish school, actually, that taught, it was called the Yiddish Schule. And the Yiddish Schule went from kindergarten to high school, and they taught Yiddish. So they learned to speak and write in Yiddish as well, like a lot of the other people that are here in Dallas. And and Pedro was also part of the Boy Scouts, and also part of they had a group of intelligentsia that worked to protect the Jewish people. That was very hush-hush. I don't know too much about it, but I can tell you he was part of that group. They had a lot of madihim. They had a lot more things that we had in Colombia as far as youth activities, because we were much more limited with the youth activities. But he did have, and he has a brother that lives in Mansfield, Texas. He's retired.
Mansfield?
And close to Arlington.
Mansfield.
Yes, Mansfield. What did I say? Whatever. And he has, his name is Aaron. Then he has and he had 2 daughters. Then Nancy, the sister, she still lives in Mexico, and she has 3 children. And then the youngest sister, Elena, made Aliyah to Israel. She's been in Israel at least 10 years, and she has a son and a daughter. That's
well, I know Pedro's a wonderful neurologist.
Yes.
And he's had a terrific career, and y'all
Yes.
are a wonderful couple.
Thank you,
And
my
we
dear.
appreciate everything y'all have done for Dallas.
And we love Dallas. This is home.
Well, thank you so
I'm glad
much.
to be part of it. Love
Thank
you
you
all.
so much.
Bye-bye.